Americans and Cubans alike are ready to move forward. I believe it's time for Congress to do the same. Yes, there are those who want to turn back the clock and double down on a policy of isolation, but it's long past time for us to realize that this approach doesn't work. It hasn't worked for 50 years.
President Obama earlier today announcing the opening of embassies in both Washington and Havana as diplomatic relations with Cuba are being restored for the first time in a half-century. The president says both the American and the Cuban people are ready for this change and that it will benefit both the American and Cuban economy. For more, joining us via Skype, Alina Hernandez, managing editor for Newsmax.com. So, Alina, you know, the Castro brothers may be communists, but in a sense, they're capitalists. What is the U.S. giving them in terms of money, goods, whatever, to restore ties?
Well, this opens the door very much for companies to be able to go there with some legitimacy. So I think, as John Boehner said today, this is a little bit shameful. It does give them some legitimacy on the international front. In addition, they've been removed from the terror list, so that allows them to engage with countries that are our allies as well. So it's really money and contracts and funding and aid beyond the U.S. It gives them legitimacy on a global level.
Now, Alina, some Cuban exiles say the U.S., or actually some proponents from Cuba, say our nation should not hold Cuba hostage because of the past. But you talk to exiles in the United States, they claim the past is still really the present in Cuba. Is it not?
Absolutely. There's no freedom of speech in Cuba. You still have to basically account to the government for every dime that you make and provide them with high taxes. If you have your own business, you don't really have any freedom of being an entrepreneur. But the biggest thing is the human rights issues. The minute that you speak out against the Castro brothers, the minute that you even talk about free elections, you're not going to have a very successful career or a life in Havana. So it's really the issue of human rights and freedom of speech, and to live a happy and unencumbered life.
Alina, in the 2 minutes that remain, let's pursue that topic of a deprivation of human rights and what we take for granted in terms of individual freedom, such as freedom of speech. The president claims that the United States will continue to push the regime in Castro for access to those freedoms. What really can the administration do while there's still a Castro regime in power?
Well, I think with some normalized relations, they can add some pressures to the regime. But again, at this point, it seems to me that there hasn't been any concession from the Castro government. You know, they released some political prisoners. They certainly released Alan Gross when we announced the deal initially. But there is still no movement on their front for political freedoms for people. There's no change in the communist policies of essentially elections that are single-party elections. So I'd like to see in the future what the administration is going to do. So far, they haven't, and I think that's a big complaint of the exile community. You know, what are we getting in return? Where are the concessions that the brothers are handing us? I mean, is this happening behind closed doors? We just don't know. But we're not seeing very many concessions from their end.
So let me just ask you about American elections 2016. Should the Democrats write off South Florida because of this move to go back to establish these relations, diplomatic relations with Cuba?
Absolutely not. I think that the Cuban community is largely in Miami, and the Cuban community here is divided. You know, you have a lot of new arrivals who feel very much that they want the opportunities to return home, to have free travel, to see their relatives, despite the Castro government. So no, I definitely think Florida is going to be a state that's in play. It's going to be a competitive state at that. So I don't think the Cuba issue is going to be huge on the minds of most Floridians. I think there'll be pockets of Florida that will care very much. But I think on the overall picture, it's going to be a competitive state.
Well, that's one thing we will continue to cover here. For now, Alina Hernandez, your perspective both on Cuba and the political situation here at home in the United States, we appreciate very much. That'll do it for us tonight. Stay brave, stay free, stay tuned.